The story I'm sharing today was deliberately published during the season of All Saints festivities. It has always been a magical celebration. The Day of the Dead. The altar, the marigold flowers. The atmosphere of festivity, mystery, death, and life. I have to confess, this story was inspired by a public account. It's not about the cousin of my friend's friend. Nor is it one of those urban legends that pop up like mushrooms afterwards. No, it's a red note story, real, one that as a child imprinted itself on my mind and that every Mexican knows. That macabre story lodged itself in my brain like a thorn, germinating years later into the tale I share today. Curious how, without ever tasting the bitter flavor of love, I could put on paper the poison of the darkest human feelings. In the town where I grew up, there was only one newsstand, a place we called La Palanqueta, as if it were another traditional sweet rather than a shop. Every Saturday, my mother made me part of her weekly pilgrimage through fashion magazines. She consoled me with comics and candies, and while she got lost among satin pages, I, with wide eyes, would spy on the forbidden corner where erotic comics and red note magazines were stacked. Among them Alarma, a graphic, bloody magazine. When my mother was distracted, I would slip like a thief to peek at those covers that screamed, "Violates her and kills her." Now, 2 decades later, I am surprised when I reread my lines as if my childhood self had glimpsed, between pages stained with red ink, the abysses of the human soul I had not yet known. My mother's torment in a disastrous marriage was like a shipwreck in slow motion. Her husband, my father, was never her partner, nor her accomplice, nor even a friend. The stories of my mother's aunts and friends echoed like reflections of the same doom. Married women who slowly faded, turning into gray shadows of what they once were, resigned to a lifelong sentence sealed by accursed paper, the contract that bound them eternally to a terrible mistake. Under that invisible yoke, they died in installments, bleeding into the routine of days with no future. In any case, this story was published by a prestigious editorial in 2007, and I felt an indescribable pride seeing my work on the shelves of Casa del Libro or FNAC. My husband, who could not read it until he learned Spanish, was deeply disturbed by the story. By then it was already too late for wife returns. So I leave you with Tamales de los Minos Santos. Enjoy it, if the bitter taste of certain truths can ever truly be enjoyed. Tamales of the Less Holy. Each year his foolish obsession repeats itself, like a macabre ritual that feeds on shared misery. Each year the same absurd refrain, that sickly stubbornness that intensifies with the acrid smell of marigolds and copal incense. His demand has become a senseless tradition after 8 years of siege, of daily living the torment of being together without truly being so. He doesn't tire. It's not enough for him, the silent Calvary he makes me live daily. Not enough to force me to swallow his foul moods. Not content with knowing that I iron his pants, starch his sheets, wash the shirts he brings home stained with lipsticks I don't wear, smelling of scents that aren't mine. Not enough that he comes to wake me at dawn, reeking of cheap alcohol, with clumsy kisses that taste of guilt and foreign lust. The imbecile thinks he's making love to me when he's actually raping me. No. Not satisfied with his tyrannical demands, his whims, his infidelities 364 days a year, he has to come and ruin November 1st for me too. The only day I smile. The litany begins in late October, when the air becomes impregnated with the aroma of spices and the whisper of dry leaves announces the arrival of the dead. My husband's mother always has the suckling pigs ready on time. Pork tamales for the altar. I've never liked pork. It's hard to chew, gets stuck in my throat and sits in my stomach for days. It weighs in my belly like my husband's clumsy body on mine each night. In my coastal home, All Saints' Day was a feast of contrasts. Corn tamales, sweet dough with a spicy heart. The mix of sweet and savory passionate me, that duality seduced me into marriage. My skin, too sugary, craved the salt of his kisses to avoid succumbing to the ants of loneliness. How naive I was. Today my hands taste of bile and disillusion. He, a man of simple tastes, can't stand complexity. Either salty or sweet, never both. That's why each year he criticizes my tamales. Each November he forces me to cook 100 tamales, which he then won't eat because they taste sweet. Then, like a victorious conqueror, he displays the pot overflowing with pork tamales, his mother's kind offering. And my 100 tamales turn sour in the steamer, rotting like my soul under the yoke of being his wife. The unwritten law of marriage echoes like an echo in my head. Never compete with your mother-in-law. I don't try, but in our case that woman weighs more than his 1,000 lovers, than the smoke of his cigarettes, than his passion for football, than his impotence that condemns us to sterility. My husband, at 36, is still a nursing infant, and I, a childless woman, watches his mother nurses him with sickly devotion. And I without children. But this year I'm besieged by weariness. This November I'll surrender myself to the night of the dead like a furtive lover. The copal swollen with incense, kumquats hidden behind veils of tinted paper. The bread, perfumed with anise and orange blossom, will wait impatiently to submerge itself in the boiling chocolate, to later revive on my tongue and gently impregnate my palate. The spirits will watch over my night, shaking the curtains with their icy breath on my neck. My house will be an altar of marigolds, death flowers announcing an imminent change. There will be no more chanting about pork tamales. This year, with the determination of a condemned woman, I'll prepare 100 tamales myself. They won't be sweet, oh no. They'll be bitter tamales, tamales stuffed with pork. The ritual of slaughtering the pig is an ancestral tradition that my mother-in-law guards with almost religious fervor. This year, armed with an arsenal of utensils that gleamed with mystical radiance, I prepared to officiate this sacrament for the first time. The ceiba tree in the garden, silent witness to so many porcine executions, yielded one of its branches to become the scepter of my improvised investiture as priestess of sacrifice. The knife, sharpened to an ominous shine, peeled garlic, pepper, ropes for binding, a pot, buckets, firewood, cloth, straw for singeing. My mother-in-law insisted it took at least 3 days to have the meat ready for tamales. I started with good time, killed the pig on October 28th. That scream, a mix of truncated childhood and animal desperation, threatened to crumble my newly acquired determination. Pigs squeal as if they were children. Wasn't that cry the echo of a frustrated motherhood? The voice of a child that never came to be? If my child were to cry like that each night, the crying wouldn't weigh on me, but the presage of a pig walking to its death fills me with anguish. My mother-in-law never turns back in cold blood. The sharp sound fills her patio each year. Until the moment she returns triumphant with her apron stained in blood. I didn't want to hear that agonizing sound at home. But fate had a surprise in store for me. The pig chosen for sacrifice turned out to be stoic, facing its end with dignified silence. No one will ever believe that I killed the animal alone. The ceiba was my accomplice and partner. Pigs are always taken from behind, and I feared taking the beast from behind. It was too big for me. Being alone like that, it would end up overpowering me. I had to calculate it coldly, set a small trap. I entertained it with bait, something very sweet so death wouldn't taste bitter. A path of sugar skulls, carved in raw sugar with the precision of an Aztec goldsmith, led it tamely to its destiny. Each bite of the animal on those sugary effigies marked the tempo of a macabre symphony, whose crescendo would culminate in the fatal blow. Each bite taken accelerated my pulse. I felt my heart leaping from my chest. It pounded so hard I even thought the animal would hear me. But the sound of sweet between its gums was louder. The moment of truth came wrapped in thick silence. My arms, loaded with the weight of 1,000 injustices and truncated dreams, delivered the blow with precision that would have made the most expert executioner envious. The animal's skull yielded with a dry crunch, similar to the sugar skull it had devoured moments before. It was a shame the sugar skull broke too. It was a true work of art. There lay the pig, turned into an inert offering, still breathing with difficulty on the ground, its eyes looking at me pleadingly. I enjoyed the delicious pleasure of being the priestess directing the rhythm of this sacrifice. My heartbeats gave compass to the cadence. The pig's slaughter wasn't just a culinary ritual. It was an initiation, a baptism. I enjoyed the bloodthirsty sensation of slowly introducing the knife into its throat. It was as if I myself were the knife, feeling the desperate agitation of its veins and its agonizing pulse descending. The pig thrashed about making guttural grunts, a discordant symphony of extinguishing life. I'll never know if they were howls of pain or pleas for help, but they resonated in the gloom of that basement like echoes of a past that refused to die. The stream of blood, thick and dark, exhausted itself to the rhythm of the animal's ever-weakening heartbeats. In that moment, when silence began to reign, I knew I had crossed a threshold from which there would be no return. I took out its heart not as a trophy but like someone unearthing a treasure. That organ, so red and pulsating, seemed to mock me with each fibrillation. So red, I thought, too red to be real. In my hand, it still vibrated with a life that refused to extinguish, as if wanting to remind me that death is just another state of being. One doesn't love with the heart, I told myself, but with the guts. The heart is a false prophet, a ghost that deceives us with promises of eternity. As unreal as the frozen smile in our wedding photo, as illogical as celebrating each year the anniversary of a lie. Promises of love are like that heart, broken before being pronounced. That heart so big stained my clothes I had to throw it to the dog. It was nothing more than a simple pig's heart. The corn must be cooked a day in advance. Once ground, it should be mixed with salt, sugar, and pork lard. The pig had a lot of fat. I had fed it too well. The pork is cut into pieces to marinate. My mother always said, with more rib than cut, onions, sweet ripe chilies, garlic, salt, pepper, and some cumin. I cooked everything together so the meat would become very tender. The banana leaves, bought at the Santa Teresa market, that labyrinth of smells and colors where innocents get lost, turned black when boiled. That's how dark my soul felt until yesterday. Today is All Saints' Day and a breeze of new strength fills me with light. I deveined the leaves with my hands, which are no longer sweet. The tamales ended up stuffed with meat, an excellent appearance. This year I've made more tamales than ever. 10 dozen. I cooked them over very low heat, while the house became perfumed with their essence. The animal's soul now prowled the rooms, libidinously impregnating the walls. The altar turned out more beautiful than ever. The green branches seemed to have been born that way, in an arch shape. The orange of the flowers blended with the cut tissue paper, the candles. Baskets full of sweets. I put out a bottle of tequila just as my husband likes it. I always end up yielding to his whims, always taking his mother's place when he becomes a tantrum-throwing child between my thighs. The incense has already filled the whole house. Today only candlelight will illuminate us. I made a path of petals so no one gets lost, so the pig can easily find its beloved sugar skulls. My mother-in-law has come to dinner. The house in half-light looks beautiful, and although it costs her to accept it, it's so evident she can't avoid the compliment. The smell of tamales and chocolate saturates the dining room. I've decorated the table with long tablecloths and cut paper. The Day of the Dead has always been a celebration for me. I await it with the same eagerness as a child awaits Christmas. No matter how much I insist we shouldn't wait for my husband for dinner, because he won't arrive tonight, his mother affirms that he can't fail us on these dates. While we wait for a guest who won't arrive, my mother-in-law browses the newspaper with the indifference of someone who doesn't know she's reading her own destiny. The crime section, that window into the abysses of the human soul, captures her attention. "Look," she exclaims, showing me a page that narrated an atrocious crime. I read the news with a mixture of fascination and contempt, knowing that the truth, as always, was stranger and more terrible than any journalistic fiction. A man's head was found today in the bathroom of a well-known shopping mall in Mexico City, PJR agents reported. The macabre discovery was made by a cleaning attendant at the shopping center located in Plaza Santa Teresa, one of the busiest in this city situated on the Southern Ring Road. The head, already without eyes, which was wrapped in a plastic bag, had been deposited in the trash basket of one of the building's women's bathrooms, the police added. The authorities said they would investigate the victim's identity and how the head ended up there, but it is presumed that the crime may have been a settling of scores between drug traffickers. Only in Mexico. I'm surprised. It's not possible that the press these days is so sold out. Look at them saying it was drugs, that I took out his eyes, as if my pig of a husband had pretty ones, and that I have anything to do with those mentioned drug lords. That's why nobody reads newspapers anymore these days. My mother-in-law and I sit at the table. The delicious smell of tamales seduces her. I know beforehand that today he will arrive very late. It's All Saints' Day and spirits don't roam houses until after midnight. It's not worth waiting for him for dinner, not today, not tomorrow, not ever. The tamales, after all, I made for his mother, to prove to her that I too can make them well. You see how the taste of the tamal changes with pork. This smells delicious. She tells me, "You're always so right," I respond while dipping a piece of bread in the chocolate. Despite the delicious smell, I refuse to eat pork. They really turned out magnificent. This is a delicacy. Thank you, but really you deserve all the credit, I answer with a smile while she takes a huge piece to her mouth. Her compliments don't inflate me after all. The taste comes from the meat, and for the animal's flavor she gets the credit. She gave birth to him, I just made the tamales.
Copyright 2024. Al toque de la una. Todos los derechos reservados. El contenido de este podcast, incluyendo audio, guiones y cualquier material adicional, está protegido por leyes de propiedad intelectual. No se permite la reproducción, distribución o modificación de este contenido sin el permiso expreso de nombre del creador o la empresa. Gracias por respetar nuestro trabajo y por escucharnos. Nos vemos en el próximo episodio.